Nigeria's countdown to the 2027 general elections is gathering pace, with recent moves by INEC and the National Assembly stirring debate about fairness, preparation and the integrity of the democratic process. INEC released a revised election timetable following the passage of the Electoral Act 2026, scheduling presidential and National Assembly polls for January 16, 2027, with governorship and state assembly elections on February 6 next year. Now, the revised calendar sets party primaries between April 23rd and May 30th, 2026, with presidential and legislative campaigns beginning August 19th, 2026. But the African Democratic Congress has publicly rejected both the timetable and the Electoral Act 2026, describing them as hurdles that could restrict a genuine competition. The party argues that new compliance requirements, especially a tight deadline to submit a fully digital membership register by April 2nd, 2026, makes it almost impossible for many opposition groups to qualify to field candidates. With campaign activities due to begin within months and primaries looming, political parties are now racing against both time and law to position themselves for 2027. And as the build-up to the 2027 general election continues, Executive Director, Rise Initiative for People's Rights, Gozie Nwachukwu, joins us now for a conversation about developments in the polity. It's good to have you with us, Barrister Nwachukwu.
Thank you.
Very good. So what are your thoughts on the revised timetable and, of course, the aftermath of the Electoral Act and, of course, permutation by the political class towards next year's general elections?
Well, thank you for having me. The truth of the matter is that the fixing of election timetables for general elections in Nigeria is an operation of law. It's a matter of statute. Therefore, every political party in Nigeria should have known that by a certain date in the month of February, in the year an election is supposed to hold, that it's likely to be the time when this election should hold or when INEC will fix the date. As a matter of fact, this change in timetable was initiated via a protest by the opposition forces. I remember I read a certain press release by the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar saying that the timetable in February fell into the Ramadan season of prayers, and that it could impact on the participation of Muslim faithfuls in the election, which is understood. So INEC had to also look within the ambits of the law and backtrack a little bit, put it on a date that wouldn't entail them to go back again, seeking legislative overrides over what had already happened. So, any quarrel that anybody has with those dates, the person has himself to blame. Because I am surprised that the people who call themselves the opposition are being caught napping over issues that are fixed by law, like election dates already. It's surprising. It is shocking. You are rejecting an electoral act that went through several legislative processes, including even public hearings, and nobody had you say a word except when the Senate passed a version of theirs that seemed not to incorporate real-time transmission of election results. That was when the opposition figures started protesting. But now they are coming out several days, close to 10 days after this law was signed. What were they doing? Equity avails only the vigilant. Equity does not avail the indolent. By my own reading of the situation, the opposition has been very indolent. They cannot continue to just complain with press releases and these things they do. If they want to be a proper opposition, they should please stand up. Because there are things that are really not sitting very well with Nigerians. The signs are ominous. If you look at the turnout of the elections in Abuja that was held about a week ago, they are very ominous signs. You can't have a situation that in 2023, an election was held, the general election, and you had about 30.5% of registered voters voting. And now in the local election in Abuja, where the indigents and the residents are supposed to be more interested in those who run affairs where they stay, and you have only about 14.6% of persons voting. That's really ominous and very disturbing signs. It shows that the polity are fast losing confidence in the electoral process. And that is very, 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 very uncomfortable for a government that is already grappled with insecurity issues. If you look at any country, I want to say this as a note of warning. And this thing is backed by several studies all over, by DFID, the UN. Any country that is grappling with insecurity and it gets to a point where the electorate begins to feel that they are alienated from the electoral process or have serious doubts about the likely outcome of an electoral process, that portends danger. That's a red flag. And I think the government should, and INEC should be careful and do what it takes to restore confidence in the electorate in this 2027 electoral process.
Well said, Barrister Nwachukwu. Now, would you say that this recently passed Electoral Act is strong enough to guarantee credible elections? And also, there were concerns raised, especially by religious leaders, about how the election timetable coincides or clashes with fasting period. Do you think that that holds water? I'd like you to address those issues.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have been involved in electioneering. And I can tell you that the document that was just passed as the Electoral Act, from all indications, suits the government in power and the majority of the people in the National Assembly, which is also the government in power. But I must say this, do the opposition really expect any favors from a government in power that want to return? They must be deluded. The truth of the matter is that that Electoral Act is not perfect. That Electoral Act did not meet the threshold the Nigerian people have set for the election that will portend to be credible. But the truth of the matter is that with what has been done, let me give you an example. Look at the election that was just held in Abuja. Do you know that most of the opposition parties didn't have agents in over 2/3, in over half of the polling units? So what we're talking about is securing of elections, transmission of results, as it were. I could remember had been done in the Osun election. I remember that Osun residents had to insist that these transmissions were done at polling unit levels, even when some of the presiding officers said they didn't have network or they had issues with they provided access to make them do the transmission. Elections are not won by complaints only. You have to put boots on the ground to be able to protect the votes which you are pretending that you are going to get. The document is not perfect. It didn't meet the thresholds, but the truth of the matter is that Nigerians can mobilize to protect their votes, even with what has been passed. The issue of the faith-based groups that are complaining about the timetable, I think the Islamic fasting and those things, it can really, yes, it can affect participation. Yeah, it can really affect participation, because when people are having to do with their religious practices that have to deal with them having some quiet time and all that, I think it should be respected, which INEC has done by moving the date to a time when you can have full participation. I think the opposition and everybody shouldn't have any excuses now. Even the excuse of having the digital register of members of parties. Come on. Come on. These things should have been known. These things should have been done. If somebody has not prepared well for a match, he should not complain before the match, so that if he loses, it will not pretend that, oh, it's because he didn't do this or that. The opposition has been very, very indolent.
If I may digress a little, Barrister Nwachukwu, over time, have people's rights, been respected by the political class when it comes to voter choice, you think?
Well, the truth of the matter is that, like I said, I want to speak directly to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and those who advise him. I think they should go to look at, there's a study we did with a group called the Middle East Council on Global Affairs, based in Doha. In that study, we discovered that most of the troubling incidents that have happened and destabilized the democracies in the Sahel are when people feel alienated from the electoral process, that their votes will not count or may not count or has not counted in past elections. The people's inalienable constitutional rights to vote have been grossly abused in several elections. We have seen where people have been disenfranchised through several shenanigans by the political class. I will advise the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to look into the possibilities of making sure that the people of Nigeria, not everybody will, but let some good number of persons, let them restore hope, that there is hope that people can vote and it could count. Let the threshold for INEC in courts are substantial compliance. Elections don't have to be perfect. They are not perfect in any part of the world. But it should be substantial compliance. And the watchword is restoration of hope that people's votes will count. As of today, if you look at the voter apathy, by what we've seen in Abuja, the signs are ominous, dangerously ominous. When the people lose interest in the electoral process because they believe that their votes will not count, their voice, their choices will not be respected, then it portends danger. I think the political class have to begin to tinker with how to manage themselves in such a manner not to give the impression that this election in 2027 has already been decided. That will be dangerous. There has to be a semblance of some contest. Any attempt to make it look like a no contest might not augur well.
And that is the danger we want to prevent by all means, by ensuring that we put all checks in place to ensure that we have a credible, transparent, and fair election come 2027. Thank you so much for your contribution on the show this afternoon. Barrister Gozie Nwachukwu is Executive Director, Arise Initiative for People's Rights.